Hello and welcome to my review for Solo, a Star Wars story, the latest installment in the ever-growing and expanding Star Wars franchise, series, money-making scheme from those pesky corporate heads at Disney. If you want to hear my more in-depth thoughts on this film, I will be doing a much bigger review on my Road to Episode 9 series. Obviously I want to talk about the film in that series and also get into more spoilery stuff. I don't feel like there's too much to spoil in Solo, but obviously I won't be talking any spoilers in this video. But I don't know, I feel like I've talked about it to death. My anticipation of this film not being coloured with excitement whatsoever when the film was announced. Had very little interest in it, thought, oh, they're doing that, I don't think they should, you know. Well, it's not that I don't think they should, it's not that I ever thought, you know, oh, I can't believe they're making this movie, they really shouldn't, but I felt like it was something I never needed to see. I never kind of watched the original trilogy and went, oh, I love these characters, I love Han and Chewie, but oh, what did they do before the original trilogy? You know, there was no yearning for me to see what happened before. You know, I feel like sometimes the imagination can conjure up a better backstory. There's a bit more romanticism to just imagining what could have happened, and I still think that to some elements of the prequel trilogy, but you know, I wasn't, and especially the fact that it was a character like Han Solo, who is so iconic and played by a great actor like Harrison Ford, who is so well known for that role, and many other roles, but you know, particularly Han Solo and Indiana Jones just underneath it, I think. I just thought you can't come close to that. I felt like they were shooting themselves in the foot by trying to do it. They were trying to cash in on kind of the, you know, the goodwill associated with the character of Han Solo, to a degree. And this is a whole other topic of conversation. When I say cashing in, obviously I mean that, you know, Disney, they want to have these movies made and they want to make money from them. But you do have these people who get to make the movies, who actually can tell their stories and, you know, make great stories. So it's not like I think it's a completely soulless operation, which many people do. But regardless, you know, I felt like, I don't think this is dangerous to go down this road. But they went down it anyway. And they announced the guy who was going to play him. There was the whole discussion with Anthony Ingruber, who does a great Harrison Ford Han Solo impression, and also played a young version of Harrison Ford in another movie. But I think a lot of people wanted that, but then I think, well, would someone who is just doing an impression, you know, still be able to serve that character in a full 2+ hour movie? I don't know. We'll never know that answer. But nevertheless, Alden Ehrenreich was chosen to be Han Solo. The trailers came out and I was not impressed. I felt like he just didn't feel like Han. And I felt like the movie was going to die a death as far as my personal enjoyment goes. You know, I just didn't think I was going to like this film. So I just wasn't excited, and I'm a huge Star Wars fan, but it is a Star Wars movie, it has Star Wars in the title, so I was going to go and see it, and I was going to have some level of eagerness. That was the word I used. I was eager to see this film. Went to see it today, opening day, and I loved it. I was so surprised by this film. And I won't go into too much of the story, but we followed the adventures of a very young Han Solo, you know, breaking away from his home planet of Corellia. He has a girl who he kind of is, I guess, kind of hooked up with at the beginning, called Kira, played by Emilia Clarke, and they kind of separate and cross paths again later on in the film, which is set a couple of years later. It's kind of a 10-minute prologue, basically, where we see Han leaving his homeworld, basically, which is just a dump. And then he goes off and he gets involved in a wild adventure, kind of a heist caper movie. He joins a crew led by Beckett, played by Woody Harrelson. He has a couple of other people on his crew and his team. Along the way, they meet this Wookiee called Chewbacca, which was my main #1 reason to be excited in any way for the film, was to see Chewbacca again, because I thought that they've done such a great job, and Jonas Suotamo, I believe is how you pronounce his name, has done a great job taking that torch from Peter Mayhew and carrying on the legacy of the great character of Chewbacca. I think he does a great job, and so I was really excited that there'd be a continuity there, that the guy who's playing Chewbacca in the new sequel trilogy movies was going to come back to do Chewbacca in a prequel film, essentially, to the original trilogy. And to me, that was the best part of the film, was Chewbacca. And Chewie and Han's relationship. You get to see how they first met, which is a great scene. I loved that so much. We get to see Han meeting Lando Calrissian. Here's where I think I'm going to have an unpopular opinion. I didn't really love Donald Glover as Lando Calrissian. I know people love Donald Glover right now. He's really for a multitude of reasons. He's a very popular person at the moment. And I haven't seen anything from this guy at all. I think he was in Spider-Man Homecoming for like 2 minutes, so I don't have much of an impression on the guy. It's not like, oh yes, Donald Glover, I love him, this is going to be great. Maybe that would have made me change my mind, but he felt patchy to me as far as being Lando. Like there's some scenes where he's kind of, the way he's affecting his voice seems like he's trying too hard a little bit. The essence and the swagger is definitely there, and there are moments where it really slips into kind of a Lando sensibility, but I just overall, I don't think he quite sold me as much as Alden Ehrenreich, who I thought was fantastic as Han Solo. I can't believe it. Trailers just didn't sell me at all, but I went into this film with an open mind, and I think that could serve us all well in going to see films, is just having an open mind. He really surprised me. He really had the feeling of Han, the feeling of Harrison Ford. It felt like a kind of a lesser experienced version of the character we see in Star Wars. So it just felt very natural to me, like the you know, the quips, but like the cockiness. You know, he's kind of very sure of himself, but at the same time you see a bit more depth to him. You know, at the beginning of the film, when he's separated from Kira and he's screaming after her, like, I really felt for that. You only see them together at the beginning of the film for a few minutes, but you already get the sense that they've been in this fight together for a long time, and they have a special relationship, and then they get separated, and it got me. You know, not emotional, but like, oh god, you know, it's so frustrating that they got separated, and you feel the oppression of the Empire everywhere. I really like that element of the film too. There's some great action sequences. There's really a flavor of adventure to the film. We go to lots of different planets, different locations. I loved all of that stuff. The world building was great, and the centerpiece of the film, I think, is the Kessel Run sequence, which something we heard about in the original trilogy, and it's spectacular. I absolutely loved it. I was on the edge of my seat, literally. I kept having to move around in my seat because I was so tense, even though I know that, you know, Han and Lando and Chewie, they're all going to get out all right, but it was such a thrilling and larger-than-life sequence. I absolutely loved it. The music will take me a while to kind of calibrate to, I suppose. I thought some of it was quite good. Didn't fully kind of latch onto me, but that was the same with The Force Awakens. I ended up loving the score for that. And I loved how they weaved in some of the old kind of Falcon themes during the Kessel Run sequence. That was really cool. L3, the droid character, wasn't as hot on her either, but I did like where the Lando and L3 relationship went, and where it kind of ended in the film. Where we leave those two characters, I thought was really well done, actually, and kind of poignant. But her as a character overall there's a lot of jokes that didn't land for me. But this didn't feel like a film that was trying too hard with the humor either. There are jokes that don't land for me personally, but there were some moments where I did have a chuckle and I really enjoyed it. There were times in this film where I was just smiling because I was having such a good time. There's one moment in the film I absolutely hated. It's in the first 10 minutes of the film, and it's one of those things where they try to go, hey, you know that thing in the original trilogy? Well, here's how it came to be. And it was so on the nose, it was so cheesy that I literally facepalmed in the cinema. I couldn't believe they went there. It's not a big deal, and it doesn't really ultimately make my enjoyment of the film suffer, but it was just so on the nose. I really didn't like it. It was something we didn't need to know that. No, just no. Unnecessary to me. And I could go on and on about the film, and I will in my other video, but for me, I absolutely loved it. Is it a great film? Not really. There are seams around the edges. There's certain like little editing things here and there where I could see maybe where the kind of the 2 different or 3 different directors were working on the film. I'm not sure if that was the issue, but there's a couple of cuts that were a little bit odd to me, but they're really minor things like that. Yeah, it's not perfect. It's certainly not. It's not on the level of you know, Force Awakens or Last Jedi, and I wouldn't even say Rogue One, because I feel like that has much more of a punch to it. But I loved that this film didn't have that. I loved that this film, you know, was high stakes for the character of Han. And see, I caught myself up there because at one point I think Lando calls him Han, and then Han says no, it's Han. But in the original trilogy they say Han. So what's the? I guess they're poking fun at that. I kind of caught myself there. What is the pronunciation? I guess it's different every time. But where was I even going with this? Yeah, from Han's perspective, Han. The stakes are quite high, but as far as the big picture, not so much. So this isn't a film about saving the galaxy, And in that sense, it's kind of the most low-stakes Star Wars film that's ever been. I think it's also the first Star Wars film that follows one through line throughout the entire movie. There's no cutting away to a different storyline with different characters. There's no kind of cross-cutting between different locations. You know, during action set pieces, sure, we'll cut back to, say, Kira and L3 and Lando, then Chewie and Han doing their thing, but we never kind of cut away from Han's story. So in that sense, it's something new, and it's something fresh, and as much as I felt like they shouldn't have gone there, I'm glad they did, and I would love to see more. What can I say? I really loved this film. I'm a Star Wars fan, so I'm an easy mark for it, but okay, my memory card got full there, so I have no idea where I left off, but I think I was saying that this was just a really fun, light kind of adventure movie, although the visual tone of it is very dark too. There's a lot of kind of very dimly lit cinematography, but it really was, what's the word, fitting in the opening act of the film, where we just see this grimy world that Han comes from, and breaking free from that still leaves him in this very dark and almost hopeless, you know, world, basically, when we see him as a trooper, basically, as this just engaging in war and trying to find his place and trying to get out and trying to make money to get a ship and all this kind of stuff. So by the end of the film, it's a bit more open and bright, and the world gets expanded a little bit. We have Paul Bettany playing the villain of the film, Dryden Voss, I believe. And he was very good. I mean, the character's very one-note, you know, but I liked kind of the flair of him. The kind of half cape was really interesting, and that location of it's a yacht. It was like a space yacht. I liked that it was kind of like a vertical thing. I loved that design. And just the different flavors of all the creatures. Another thing I love about Star Wars is just all these weird creature designs, and this film has all of those things. And that was cool. We saw some creatures that we recognized from before, like what's the species of Greedo. You know, we had one of those. Oh, it's on the tip of my tongue. I've forgotten it. But you know, we see familiar creatures, but new creatures. Again, they did a great job with that. And the visual effects. You know, I loved the train sequence was great too. The kind of when they try and knock off some of the fuel from this train that kind of goes on a weird kind of axis around these mountains. Great kind of action stuff. Yeah, I had a blast with this film. It was a breath of fresh air. You know, as much as I love The Last Jedi, as much as I love Rogue One, they are movies that are so down at points. You know, there's such a despair to those movies, and this one is kind of free of that. You know, there's tension kind of filled moments where the stakes do matter to the characters, but there's nothing too kind of world-weary about the whole thing, where it's really dour and kind of downbeat, and there's really like a bigger enemy that needs to be defeated at the end of the day. It kind of leaves it open for more, but it doesn't kind of it doesn't set itself in this kind of slot of trying to tell a bigger story. Like I said, it leaves it open to tell more, but it's not like it feels like a complete film to me. You know, could we see more of it? Yeah. You know, do we need to see more? I don't know. I don't know if they will. I don't think the film's going to be as successful as maybe they want, but we'll see. Anyway, I'm really glad it turned out as good as it did, considering Ron Howard had to step in at kind of the, you know, the 7th hour. The 7th hour, is that even a phrase? At the 11th hour, yeah. So yeah, I think that that was a worry, that it would be, you know, kind of all over the place, but I didn't think it was. You know, again, there's seams around the edges, like I said, and now I'm just repeating myself. But let me know your thoughts on the film down below, what you thought of it. Otherwise, stay tuned for my more expanded review as part of the Road to Episode 9 series. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.
It's alright by me. Apart from the fact he throws cans of Carlin into a tree. Yeah, he's really cool. Yeah, he's really cool. But he's not quite as cool as you, 'cause